She walked away from everything. And the Duke came after her. The carriage door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in Ilara's chest. Rain hammered the roof like judgment, and through the streaming windows, the Duke's estate, the only home she'd known for 3 years, disappeared into the storm-dark night. Her hands trembled as she clutched the single worn carpet bag that held everything she owned. Everything except her dignity. That, she'd left behind the moment she'd heard Lady Beatrice's voice carrying through the drawing room like poison wrapped in silk. Hello, lovely. If you're enjoying this tale of misunderstanding, second chances, and love that refuses to let go, I'd be so grateful for a like or subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories of dignity, redemption, and hearts that find their way home. And if you're up for it, tell me in the comments, have you ever walked away from something you loved to protect yourself? I read every note and it always brings a smile to my face. 1. 3 hours earlier, Ilara had been standing outside the drawing room, summoning courage to enter. Inside, guests laughed over wine and the promise of an announcement Duke Sebastian Thornhill had promised to make that evening. She'd smoothed her simple dress, not fashionable, never fashionable, but clean and carefully mended, and reminded herself she was only the Duke's ward. A companion. Someone to be grateful for shelter and ask for nothing more. Even if her heart had stopped obeying that rule months ago. She'd reached for the door handle when Lady Beatrice's voice stopped her cold. Oh, Sebastian is only keeping Ilara out of pity, you understand. The poor thing has nowhere else to go. Beatrice's laugh was musical, cruel. He'll keep her comfortable until he announces our engagement tonight. Then we'll find her a suitable position somewhere far away. A governess, perhaps. Somewhere she won't be underfoot. Ilara's hand froze on the brass handle. You're quite certain he'll propose tonight? Another woman asked, voice eager with gossip. Absolutely certain. Why else would he ask me to stay through the evening? He's been working up to it for weeks. The man is terribly proper about these things. A pause, then Beatrice's voice turned sharp with satisfaction. And once we're married, this house will be run properly. No more sad little strays cluttering up the corners. Ilara should have walked away then. Should have known better than to listen to rumors and spite. But she'd looked through the gap in the door and seen Sebastian standing near the fireplace, glass in hand, listening to the conversation. He said nothing. Did nothing. Just stood there while Beatrice claimed him like property and dismissed Ilara like dust. That silence, that terrible, confirming silence, broke something in Ilara's chest that had been cracking for months. She'd fled to her room, that small space under the eaves that had been hers since Sebastian had found her 3 years ago, orphaned, penniless, desperate. He'd offered her a position as companion to his elderly aunt, who died 6 months later. Instead of sending Ilara away, he'd asked her to stay. To help manage the household correspondence. To sit with him in the library on quiet evenings, reading while he worked. She'd thought. God, what had she thought? That those evenings meant something? That the way he looked at her when she laughed was different from how he looked at everyone else? That a duke could love someone like her? Foolish. Childish. Dangerous. Ilara had packed quickly, hands shaking. Not much to pack, she'd arrived with nothing, and 3 years of wages saved carefully had bought her almost nothing. A few dresses. Books Sebastian had given her. The amber brooch that had been her mother's, the only thing of value she owned. She'd written a letter. Not an angry one, she had no right to anger. Just gratitude for his charity, explanation that she'd found a position elsewhere, wishes for his happiness. The lies had come easier than the truth, which was, I love you too much to watch you marry her. I love you too much to stay and break in pieces every day. The letter sat on her pillow now, precisely centered. Ilara had looked back once before closing the door, memorizing the room that had been her sanctuary. Then she'd slipped down the servants' stairs, out through the kitchen garden, and found the hired carriage waiting at the end of the drive. Now, miles from Thornhill Manor, the storm worsened. Rain turned to driving sheets of water. The carriage lurched through mud that grabbed at the wheels like hands. How much farther to the station? Ilara called to the driver. Can't make it to the station in this, miss. His voice was rough, dismissive. Wheels near to breaking. I'll take you to the nearest inn and you can sort yourself from there. But I paid for passage too. You paid for what I could deliver. This is what I can deliver. Take it or walk. Ilara bit back tears and nodded, though he couldn't see her in the darkness. At Thornhill Manor, Sebastian climbed the stairs to Ilara's room, a small velvet box burning in his pocket. He'd planned this moment for weeks. The ring, a sapphire the color of her eyes, had been his mother's. He'd spent the evening gathering courage, which felt absurd for a man of 36 who'd faced down Parliament and foreign diplomats without flinching. But Ilara made him nervous in the best way. Made him want to be worthy of the way she looked at him, like he was good rather than merely powerful. He knocked softly. Ilara, may I speak with you? Silence. He knocked again, concern rising. She'd seemed upset earlier, rushing past him with her face averted. He'd assumed she was tired from helping prepare for the evening's guests. When she didn't answer, Sebastian opened the door. The room was dark, cold, empty in a way that went beyond the absence of a person. He lit a lamp with trembling hands and saw immediately what was wrong. Her dresses were gone from the wardrobe. Her books missing from the small shelf. The hair ribbons that usually lay scattered on the dresser, gone. Everything gone except a single folded letter on the pillow. Sebastian's hands were unsteady as he opened it. Your Grace. I am deeply grateful for the kindness you have shown me these 3 years. Your charity saved my life when I had nowhere to turn. However, I have secured a position elsewhere and feel it is time to relieve you of the burden of my care. Please accept my resignation as your ward and my sincere wishes for your future happiness. With eternal gratitude. Ilara. The letter was precise. Polite. Utterly wrong. Burden. Sebastian's voice cracked on the word. She thinks. He read it again, seeing what wasn't written. No warmth. No mention of the evenings in the library, the conversations that had become the best part of his days. No indication that she felt even a fraction of what he felt. Just gratitude. As if he'd been performing charity rather than falling desperately, impossibly in love. Sebastian's hands crushed the letter. Then he moved, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He burst into the drawing room where guests still lingered, Beatrice holding court near the fireplace. Sebastian. Darling, we were just. Get out. His voice was flat, dangerous. The room went silent. I beg your pardon. Beatrice's smile faltered. All of you. Out of my house. Now. Sebastian, surely you don't mean. I mean exactly what I said, Beatrice. He turned to face her fully, and something in his expression made her take a step back. You have been spreading lies about an engagement that does not exist and will never exist. You have been cruel to someone under my protection. And you will leave my home immediately. But the announcement. The only announcement I intended to make tonight was my engagement to Ilara. The woman you just drove away with your poison. Beatrice's face went white. That nobody. You can't be serious. Out. The word was a roar that made every person in the room flinch. They fled. All of them. Sebastian didn't watch them go. He was already moving toward the stables, calling for his horse. His head groom appeared, alarmed. Your Grace, you can't ride in this storm. Saddle midnight. Now. The roads are flooding, Your Grace. It's not safe. Sebastian grabbed the saddle himself, his movements swift and certain despite the fear clawing at his throat. Ilara was out there. Alone. In danger. Because of his stupidity, his cowardice, his failure to tell her the truth when it mattered. I will not lose her, he said, voice rough with emotion he didn't bother hiding. Not tonight. Not ever. He swung onto Midnight's back and rode into the darkness, rain immediately soaking through his fine clothes. Behind him, the manor blazed with light. Ahead, only storm and night and the desperate hope that he wasn't too late. 2. The hired carriage tilted dangerously as the wheel finally gave way. Ilara braced herself against the seat, heart hammering. The driver cursed, bringing the vehicle to a grinding halt that threw her against the side panel. That's it, then, he announced, climbing down. Wheels cracked clean through. You'll have to walk from here. Ilara stared at him through the open door. Rain poured down in sheets. The road, if you could call it that, was more mud than anything solid. In the distance, perhaps a mile away, She could see lights that might be an inn. I paid you. And I brought you as far as I could. Not my fault the weather's turned foul. He grabbed her carpet bag and dropped it in the mud. Best get moving before it gets worse. You can't just leave me here. But he was already unhitching the horse, clearly intending to ride back the way they'd come and leave the broken carriage and Ilara behind. Please, she tried one more time, hating the desperation in her voice. At least help me to the inn. Help yourself, miss. I've got paying customers waiting. He swung onto the horse's back. Word of advice. A woman alone shouldn't be too proud to accept help when it's offered. You might have had an easier time of it if you'd stayed where you were wanted. He rode off before she could respond to the cruel dismissal. Ilara stood in the rain, watching him disappear. Her dress was already soaked through. Her shoes, her only pair, sank into mud with each step. The carpet bag was heavy, awkward, straps digging into her hands. She started walking. Every step was harder than the last. The wind pushed against her like a living thing. Rain found every gap in her clothes. By the time she stumbled into the yard of what she desperately hoped was an inn, her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. The sign read the crossroads. Not promising, but better than dying on the road. Ilara pushed open the door, bringing cold and wet into a room thick with smoke and suspicion. A dozen faces turned toward her, all male, all rough, all assessing. The innkeeper was a heavy-set woman with cold eyes. We don't cater to your type here. My type. Ilara's voice shook from cold and something darker. I'm a traveler who needs a room for the night. I can pay. Can you? The woman's gaze traveled over Ilara's soaked dress, her single worn bag, her obvious distress. Doesn't look like you can pay much. I have money. Show me. Ilara fumbled in her bag with numb fingers, pulling out her small purse. The coins inside felt pathetically light. 3 shillings. Not enough for a decent room, probably barely enough for a corner to sleep in. That all you got? The innkeeper's voice held contempt. I can work. I can help in the kitchen or... We don't need help. We need paying guests. The woman turned away, dismissive. You can warm yourself by the fire for an hour, then you're out. Storm or no storm. Ilara moved toward the fireplace on shaking legs, acutely aware of the eyes following her. She set her bag down and held her hands toward the flames, trying to stop the violent trembling that had taken over her body. Pretty thing like you shouldn't be alone, a voice said too close to her ear. Ilara spun to find a man standing there middle-aged, stubbled, with eyes that made her skin crawl. I'm not alone. I'm meeting someone. Are you? He smiled, showing broken teeth. Funny. Looks to me like you're very alone. And very cold. I've got a room upstairs. Warm bed. Could share it, if you're friendly. No thank you. Ilara tried to move past him. His hand caught her arm. Wasn't really asking, sweetheart. Woman comes in here looking like she did, no proper escort, barely any money that tells a story. And the story says you need help. I'm offering help. Let go of me. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Or what? His grip tightened. You'll call for the constable? There is no constable out here, girl. Just you and me and what we can work out between us. Ilara tried to pull away. His other hand moved to her waist. She opened her mouth to scream. The door burst open with a crack of thunder. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the storm. Tall, broad-shouldered, soaked through, radiating fury that made the entire room fall silent. Duke Sebastian Thornhill stepped into the light, and Ilara's world tilted. He was unrecognizable and utterly familiar, hair plastered to his head, fine clothes ruined with mud, eyes wild with something that looked like fear and rage combined. He took in the scene with a single sweep. Ilara cornered, the man's hands on her, the threat hanging in the air like smoke. Remove your hands, Sebastian said, his voice deadly quiet, or I will remove them for you. The man laughed nervously. And who might you be? The Duke of Thornhill. Sebastian moved forward with predatory grace. And the lady is under my protection. So I will ask you one more time. Remove your hands. The man dropped Ilara's arm like it burned. Stepped back. The entire inn seemed to shrink away from Sebastian's presence. He crossed to Alara in 3 strides, shrugging out of his heavy riding coat and wrapping it around her shoulders. His hands were gentle despite the fury still radiating from him, carefully pulling the coat closed, checking her face for injuries. "Are you hurt?" His voice shook slightly. Alara couldn't speak. Could only stare at him, at the man she'd fled from, who'd somehow followed her into the storm, who looked at her now like she was precious beyond measure. Alara. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away rain or tears, she wasn't sure which. "Are you hurt?" "No." The word came out broken. "But you shouldn't be here. You should be with Lady Beatrice. You should be." "There is no Lady Beatrice." Sebastian's voice was fierce. "There never was. There is only you. Why did you run?" "I heard her. In the drawing room. She said you were only keeping me out of pity. That you were announcing your engagement to her tonight. And you," Alara's voice broke. "You didn't deny it. You just stood there." Sebastian's face went absolutely still. "I didn't hear her. I was listening to Lord Pemberton discuss crop rotation because I was too nervous about what I planned to do later to pay attention to social chatter." He released her face to dig in his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "I didn't deny it because I didn't hear it. Because I was thinking about this." He opened the box. Inside, a sapphire ring caught the firelight. "I was waiting for the right moment to ask you to marry me. Not out of pity. Not out of obligation. Because I love you. Because I have loved you for months and been too much of a coward to say it." Sebastian dropped to his knees on the dirty floor, heedless of the mud and the watching strangers and the complete destruction of ducal dignity. "Alara, come home. Not as my ward. Not as my companion. As my wife. As my duchess. As the woman I cannot live without." The inn was absolutely silent except for the storm howling outside. Alara stared down at him, this powerful man kneeling in filth, offering her everything, looking at her like she held his entire world in her hands. "You love me." Her voice was barely a whisper. Desperately. Completely. Inconveniently. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Why else would I ride through a storm like a madman, terrified I'd lost you before I could tell you the truth? I thought I was a burden. I thought. You are the best part of my life." Sebastian's voice cracked. "Every evening in the library. Every quiet breakfast. Every moment you've spent in my home has been a gift I didn't deserve. And when I found your room empty, I realized my entire world had walked out the door." Alara sank to her knees in front of him, heedless of her ruined dress. "I love you. I've loved you so long I forgot what not loving you felt like. But I thought. Never again." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "Never doubt this. Never doubt us." She kissed him then, there on the floor of a cheap inn with strangers watching and the storm raging outside. Kissed him with months of buried feeling, with relief and joy and the dizzy realization that the impossible thing she'd wanted was possible after all. When they finally pulled apart, Sebastian helped her to her feet and turned to the innkeeper, his ducal authority snapping back into place like armor. "A room. Your best. And send for a doctor to check her for exposure. Your Grace, I didn't realize." Now. The woman fled. Sebastian kept his arm around Alara, sheltering her against his side. "We'll stay here tonight until the storm passes. Then we go home. Together." "Together," Alara agreed, leaning into his warmth. Outside, lightning split the sky. Inside, for the first time since she'd fled, Alara felt safe. If you're enjoying this story, I'd be so grateful for a like and subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories you'd love. 3. The storm raged through the night. Alara sat by the fire in the inn's best room, which wasn't saying much, but it was warm and dry and Sebastian was there, which made it perfect. He'd insisted on the doctor despite her protests. The elderly man had examined her, pronounced her chilled but not dangerously so, and prescribed hot tea and rest. Then he'd looked at Sebastian with knowing eyes. "You rode through that storm for her? I would ride through worse." The doctor had smiled. "Then she'll be fine. Love's the best medicine for most ailments." Now they sat in companionable silence, Sebastian in the chair beside hers, their hands linked. He hadn't let go of her since the doctor left, as if afraid she might vanish if he stopped touching her. "Tell me what happened," Ilara said finally. "Tonight. Before I left." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "I spent the evening trying to work up courage to propose. I had planned it perfectly, I thought. Wait until the guests left, come to your room, ask you properly." He laughed bitterly. "Instead, I was making polite conversation about farming methods while Beatrice spread poison and you thought I was complicit. Why didn't you tell me?" Ilara's voice was soft. "Before tonight. Before everything went wrong. Why didn't you tell me you cared?" "Fear." The admission came hard. "You were so young when you came to Thornhill. Just 20. I was 33 and grieving my aunt and not fit company for anyone. By the time I realized what I felt, 2 years had passed and you seemed content with our friendship. I was terrified that declaring myself would ruin what we had. That you'd feel obligated because of your position. That I'd become another man using power to trap you." "I never felt trapped," Ilara said. "I felt seen. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me and saw a person, not a burden or a charity case or a problem to solve. You were never any of those things. You were—" Sebastian stopped, struggling for words. "The library was my refuge. Where I went to escape the weight of the title and the expectations. And then you were there, reading by the fire, and suddenly my refuge became home." "You became home." Ilara felt tears threaten. "I thought you just tolerated me. That you let me stay because you were kind. I let you stay because the thought of you leaving made it impossible to breathe." He raised her hand to his lips. "And tonight, when I found your room empty, I understood what drowning feels like on dry land." They sat in silence, watching the fire. Outside, the storm showed no signs of easing. "Beatrice came to the house 3 weeks ago," Sebastian said suddenly. "She invited herself. I should have sent her away immediately, but I was trying to be polite. She kept making assumptions about our relationship, and I kept correcting them, but she didn't listen. Or she chose not to hear. She's beautiful," Ilara said quietly. "So is a painting. And about as interesting to converse with." Sebastian turned to look at her fully. "Ilara, you are beautiful. But more than that, you're intelligent and kind and you make me laugh. You see the world in ways I never considered. You challenge me. You make me want to be better than I am. You're already extraordinary. I'm a duke who was too cowardly to tell the woman he loved the truth. That's not extraordinary. That's pathetic." He smiled sadly. "But I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to do better. Starting now." He slid from his chair to kneel before her again, the ring box once more in his hand. "Ilara, I'm asking you again. Not in a dirty floor, but here, in firelight, when you've had time to think. Will you marry me? Not because you're grateful. Not because you have nowhere else to go. But because you love me and want to spend your life with me." Ilara looked at this man, this powerful, gentle, foolish man who'd ridden through a storm for her. Who knelt before her now offering everything without demand or expectation. "I want to spend my life with you," she said clearly. "Not as your charity case. Not as someone you rescued. As your equal partner. Your wife. The person you come home to. Always," Sebastian breathed. "You'll always be the person I come home to." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the sapphire catching firelight like captured sky. Then he kissed her again, slower this time, with the promise of forever in every brush of lips. When he finally lifted her into his arms and carried her to the bed, it wasn't with passion but with tenderness, just holding her close, letting her rest against his chest while the storm raged outside. "Sleep," he murmured against her hair. "I'll keep watch. You need rest too. I'll rest when I'm certain you're real. When I'm sure this isn't a dream and I won't wake to find you gone again." Ilara tilted her head to look up at him. "I'm not going anywhere. Promise me." "I promise. No more running. No more misunderstandings. From now on, we talk. About everything." "Everything," Sebastian agreed. She fell asleep listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong beneath her ear. And for the first time since she'd fled Thornhill Manor, the fear that had been choking her eased into something softer. Hope. 4. Dawn broke clear and cold. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming. Sebastian woke to find Elara still in his arms, her breathing soft and even, the sapphire ring catching morning light. He watched her sleep for a long moment, marveling at the miracle of her presence. Hours ago, he'd been terrified he'd lost her forever. Now she wore his ring and his name would be hers, and the future he'd been too afraid to imagine was suddenly, impossibly real. "I can feel you staring," Elara murmured without opening her eyes. "I'm memorizing." "Memorizing what?" "This. You. The way you look when you're not afraid. When you know you're loved." He brushed a curl from her face. "I never want to forget it." She opened her eyes, smiling. "Good morning, Your Grace." "Good morning, future Duchess." The title made her laugh, half delight, half terror. "I have no idea how to be a duchess." "Neither did my mother, apparently. She told me once that being a duchess is just being yourself with more jewelry and considerably more paperwork." Sebastian's expression grew serious. "But Elara, you don't have to be anything other than who you are. The woman I fell in love with. That's more than enough." They dressed slowly, Elara in her slightly less damp dress, Sebastian in clothes that had seen considerably better days. The innkeeper provided breakfast with obsequious apologies, clearly terrified she'd offended a duke. "The bill, Your Grace, will be paid generously for your hospitality." Sebastian's voice was cool but not cruel. "Though I suggest you treat all your guests with respect, regardless of their apparent means. You nearly turned away my future wife because she arrived in distress." The woman paled. "Your Grace, I didn't realize. That's the problem. You should treat everyone well, not just those you realize are important." He softened slightly. "But you gave us shelter when we needed it. For that, you have my thanks." They left as the sun climbed higher, Sebastian's horse somehow having found its way to the inn stable overnight. He lifted Elara into the saddle, then swung up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Home," he said simply, and urged the horse forward. The ride to Thornhill took 2 hours. Elara spent them leaning back against Sebastian's chest, marveling at how different the world looked now. The same roads she'd fled down in terror yesterday were beautiful in morning light. The same trees, the same fields, but everything transformed because she was riding toward home instead of away from it. "Are you nervous?" Sebastian asked as the manor came into view. "Terrified," Elara admitted. "Your staff is going to think I've lost my mind. Yesterday I was the ward. Today I'm the Duchess-to-be. That's quite a leap. They already love you. They're going to be delighted. Lady Beatrice might still be there. If she is, she won't be for long." Sebastian's voice turned hard. "She spread lies about you. About us. She's not welcome in our home. Our home." The words made Elara's heart stutter with joy. As they approached the manor, Elara saw figures on the steps. The entire staff seemed to have assembled, footmen, maids, the butler, the housekeeper, all waiting. Sebastian reined in the horse at the foot of the steps. Every eye was on them. Elara felt her face heat, acutely aware of her bedraggled appearance, her rumpled dress, the way she was sitting in front of the Duke with his arms around her. Then Sebastian did something that made her breath catch. Instead of dismounting first and helping her down perfunctorily, he climbed down and then lifted her from the saddle with exquisite care, as if she were made of glass. He set her gently on the ground, keeping his hands on her waist, making sure every person watching understood exactly what she meant to him. "This is Elara," he announced to the assembled staff, his voice carrying clearly. "Some of you know her as my ward. That ends today. She is my fiancée. In 1 month, she will be my wife and your Duchess. I expect you to treat her with the respect and love she deserves." Silence held for a heartbeat. Then Mrs. Hartley, the housekeeper who'd been kind to Elara from her first day, broke into a wide smile. "About time, Your Grace," she said warmly. "We were beginning to wonder if you'd ever see what was right in front of you." Laughter rippled through the staff. Several of the maids were openly crying with joy. The butler, stern, proper Mr. Simmons, actually smiled. "Welcome home, Miss Elara," he said. "Or shall I practice calling you Your Grace now?" "Just Elara is fine for another month," she managed, overwhelmed by their warmth. "Nonsense," Mrs. Hartley said, coming down the steps to embrace her. Your family. You've always been family. Now it's just official. Movement at the top of the steps drew Ilara's attention. Lady Beatrice stood there, still in last night's finery, clearly having stayed the night despite Sebastian's dismissal. Her face was a mask of fury barely contained by breeding. "This is absurd," she announced to the gathered crowd. "Sebastian, surely you don't mean to marry her. She's nobody. She has nothing. She can't possibly be Duchess." "She's perfect," Sebastian interrupted coldly. "And you are trespassing. Leave my property immediately." "Your father would be horrified." "My father would be delighted that I found someone who makes me happy rather than someone who makes me miserable trying to live up to arbitrary standards." Sebastian moved to stand beside Ilara, taking her hand. "Your carriage is waiting. I suggest you use it." Beatrice's composure finally cracked. "You'll regret this. Society will never accept her. You'll be a laughingstock. Then I'll laugh with them." Sebastian's voice was final. "Goodbye, Lady Beatrice." She left, finally, in a storm of silk and fury. The staff watched her go with poorly concealed satisfaction. When her carriage disappeared down the drive, Sebastian turned to Ilara with a smile that transformed his face. "Welcome home, my love." "Home," Ilara echoed, and the word had never sounded so sweet. If you're enjoying this story, I'd be so grateful for a like and subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories you'd love. 5. 1 month later, Ilara stood in what had been Sebastian's mother's room and was now hers, watching her reflection in the mirror with something like wonder. The wedding dress was simple but exquisite cream silk that Mrs. Hartley and the maids had worked on tirelessly, adding delicate embroidery and lace. Her hair was dressed with small white flowers from the Thornhill Gardens. The sapphire ring caught light with every movement of her hand. She looked like a duchess. More importantly, she felt like herself. "You're radiant," Mrs. Hartley said, adjusting a final fold of the dress. "His Grace won't be able to take his eyes off you." "He never can anyway," one of the younger maids giggled. "We've noticed, Miss Ilara. He watches you like you're the only person in the room." "That's because she is," Sebastian's voice said from the doorway. Every woman in the room spun around. The groom wasn't supposed to see the bride before the ceremony, but Sebastian had never been good at following rules when it came to Ilara. "Your Grace," Mrs. Hartley protested. "It's bad luck." "I don't believe in luck. I believe in choice." Sebastian's eyes never left Ilara. "And I choose her. Now and always." Mrs. Hartley and the maids retreated with knowing smiles, leaving them alone. Sebastian crossed the room slowly, drinking in the sight of her. "You're beautiful. You're biased. I'm correct." He took her hands gently. "Ilara, before we go downstairs, before we speak vows in front of everyone, I need to tell you something." "What?" "When you walked away that night, I realized something. My world went with you. This house, this title, everything I've built, it means nothing without you in it. You're not just the woman I love. You're home. You're peace. You're the future I want to wake up to every morning for the rest of my life." Ilara felt tears threaten. "Sebastian, I know I've said it before, but I need you to understand. This isn't duty. This isn't obligation. This is choice. My choice. Every day, for the rest of our lives, I choose you. And I choose you," Ilara whispered. "Even when it's hard. Even when I'm scared. Even when I don't understand why someone like you could love someone like me. Someone like me, a duke who's too stubborn for his own good." Sebastian smiled. "Someone like you, the kindest, smartest, most resilient woman I've ever known. Ilara, you're not lucky to have me. I'm lucky to have you." He kissed her then, gently, reverently, like she was something precious beyond measure. When they finally went downstairs, the chapel was full. Not a grand affair. Ilara had wanted something small, intimate. Just the staff, a few neighbors, Pastor Whitmore who'd served Thornhill for 40 years. Sebastian walked her down the aisle himself because she had no family to give her away. But really, she thought, she was giving herself. Choosing this man, this life, this future with clear eyes and an open heart. The vows were traditional. The promises eternal. When Sebastian slipped the wedding band onto her finger beside the engagement ring, his hands were steady but his eyes were bright with emotion. I love you, he whispered, too quiet for anyone but her to hear. I love you, she whispered back. Pastor Whitmore pronounced them married. Sebastian kissed her while the chapel erupted in applause and cheers. The celebration afterward was joyful, a wedding breakfast in the Great Hall, toasts from staff who'd become family, laughter and music and warmth. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing for more tales of moral courage, second chances, and love that sees truly. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How would you handle discovering a devastating secret? What does real partnership look like to you? Share your reflections in the comments below. Until next time, may you always choose truth over performance, dignity over revenge, and may you find someone who values you for exactly who you are. This is your storyteller reminding you that the most powerful stories are the ones where people choose character over convenience, even when it costs them everything.